All right, welcome back, Algebra 2. So we're still on 9.5 graphing sine and cosine, but what I thought I'd do is show you guys how to identify key features on graphs if you already have the graph. So some of your questions on Edgenuity ask you to do this. So I have a couple of trig functions here, and we want to find the period, the amplitude, the y-intercept, and also the range for each of these graphs. So let's go ahead and start off with example 3 here. I think I left off on example 2 on the board. All right, so the first thing is the period. Now remember what period stands for. Period stands for where does it start and where does the cycle end. And so I know that these trig functions you're looking at here are a little strange because they've got a lot of wave going on. So I always tell people to try and hit for the center. Always go back to your y-axis here to try and help you find the beginning. So I'm going to do just that. So I'm going to come over here to the y-axis. The first thing I notice here is that I do have a high point. So think back to the patterns that we talked about. I mentioned last time that high points are important because cosine starts on a high or a low. So I'm willing to bet that this trig function here is a sort of cosine graph all to begin with. So I'm pretty sure this is cosine, but let's see where the pattern stops. So it's high, center, low, center, and then high. So right here is where our graph is ending, okay? This is where our graph ends. So look at that value here. What is this value, this radian here that it's ending at? Kind of erased it there. Let me get it back uncovered. So right here is where our graph's ending at. So this is going to be at 2 pi. So if we want to see our period, we say, okay, our period is 2 pi length. It started at 0 here at the beginning and it ended at 2 pi. So that's our period length. All right, so let's start talking about some of this other information now here too. So let me erase that. Let's go to a different color. Let's go to this one. All right, so now let's talk about amplitude. So your amplitude has to do with your height, but remember what I said, your amplitude is from the center line up. So let's do that there. Let's go from our center line up. How high is it from here to here? So you can see your y value from 0. This has an amplitude of 4. By the way, I didn't mention it in the last video, but I should mention it now. Amplitude has to be positive because it's like a distance. So you never say a negative amplitude. You just say my amplitude is 4 or 2 or something like that. So based on this graph here, our amplitude is 4. All right, so let me erase this now. All right, so now let's talk about key features. We got y-intercepts. Y-intercept is basically just the y-intercept. There's only going to be one. So remember, this is your y-axis here. And so this graph only crosses at one spot right there. And so right there is your y-intercept. So that point is 0, 4. So 0, 4 is your y-intercept. Your range, so remember the range has an interval, also has to do with low, high. So we talked about this last time too. So our maximum is here. This is our max. But our lows occur down here. So these are our minimums. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're writing this out. So when you write this, we always write the low. So the low value here, y value is -4. So this is going from -4. Then you have your less than, I'm so terrible at writing on this thing too. All right, so it's less than -4, less than or equal to y, less than or equal to, and the high value is 4. So that's what your interval would look like there. Okay? All right, so that's all our information. Let's jump over to the next one and basically do the same thing. So going back over to our example 4 here. So we've got our graph. Again, I know that there's a lot of sine waves going on here. So you're kind of like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Always try and go back to the center, which is where the y-axis is. So right here. So if I'm looking at this, I'm going to look at this and say, okay, this is where my starting point is. So again, think about pattern-wise. This is starting at center. So likelihood, this is a sine graph right here. Okay, this is starting at center. So we got center, high, center, low, and center. So this one's a little different, and I know we didn't talk about it, but I wanted you guys to really get an idea of periods. So this period is going to be longer. So this one started here at the beginning, right? But if you think about this center high, center low, center, this is where your graph ends. And so look at the length there. It started at 0, but it went all the way to 4 pi. So this one is a little different. This graph has a period of 4 pi because it took all that time, all the way to 4 pi, to complete the cycle of center high, center low, center. All right, so that's your period on that one. Let's go ahead and take a look at the amplitude now. So again, amplitude has to do with your height. So let's go back to height here. And so in terms of height, here's our center line. So we're still looking at that, but this graph gets as this high. So we're trying to think, what's this distance right here? So take a look at that distance from 0 to 2. This has an amplitude of 2. So there's your amplitude. Again, it's never a negative value, it's always positive. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Y-intercept. Y-intercept is just a value here. So let's go ahead and take a look at your y-axis. Again, here's your y-axis. So this one has a y-intercept at 0, 0. It's kind of unusual for that to happen, but yay, 0, 0. That's your y-intercept. They ask you a lot of those questions on your Edgenuity questions. All right, and the last one is this range. So again, it's low to high. So here's our max right here. Our max is at 2. Here's our low right here, our minimum. This is at -2. So remember, we write the minimum first. So we got to start it off with -2 less than or equal to y less than or equal to a +2. So that's what that interval would look like for that.